All right, so we're here. This is the last formal lecture that we're going to be doing. This is lecture number 7. Lecture number 8 is you guys, and lecture number 8 is scheduled for November 23rd at 11 a.m. Eastern time, so 8 a.m. Pacific time, and Daniel, I guess 6 or 7 hours later where you are. And so we're going to do case study presentations. I was just wondering who wants to go first? Who wants to do the first presentation? Any volunteers? Karina, unmute yourself.
I'll go first.
All right, Karina, you're number 1. And what is the name of your case study?
It'll be Calabogie subdivision.
Okay. And who wants to go second? Well, I'm hearing. Okay, Jessica, what is your case study name?
No. I was not raising my hand. I was about to ask. So we're going to be split into 2 sessions. And how many people per session are you looking for?
Well,
or is it all of us in one session?
We'll see how it goes. You know, if we can get it done in 1 session, we'll do it. If it takes 2 sessions, we'll do it. If it takes more, I mean, I've got to keep going until I hear all the case studies. So, you know, don't worry about it. Just think about what your case study, and if you don't present on the 23rd of November, we'll find some time to, you know, we'll just continue till I hear all of them. So, okay, so who's going to be number 2 on the 23rd?
Hey, Bruce, I can go.
Okay, Dan, you're number 2. All right, and who wants to be number 3? Dan, can you, Dan Walker, can you unmute yourself one more time? Give me the name of the case study again.
Let's go with Emperor Residences.
Oh yeah, Emperor Residences. Very nice. Okay, I look forward to that. All right, who wants to go number 3? By the way, you don't have to do it. If you guys decide not to do it, that's okay. Who wants to go number 3?
That was number 3.
Well, this is a resounding, enthusiastic crowd. I can't believe it.
Dave, why don't you go? Number 3.
Who?
Dave. I don't know if he's
you want to
there.
go number 3?
There?
Dave?
Yeah, I think I've been voluntold, so I can do that.
And Dave, what is the name of your case study?
Montreal Road Development Project.
Right, Montreal Road Development. All right, that's good. And how about number 4? I'm looking at Alex and Daniel. I haven't heard from these guys yet.
Yeah, we have 2. I mean, we have I don't know what to call it. The Fox Crescent infill.
Yeah, Fox Crescent.
And then there's the
Woodruff, the Woodruff Executive Suites.
So
I don't know if you want a fancy name.
Who would be the lead on Fox Crescent?
That's me. I'll present that one.
I think that would be
Yeah.
Alex. So Alex, we'll put you in as number 4. But Daniel, we won't put you in as number 5. I want to, you know, we go number 4, and then somebody else, and then maybe switch back to you. All right. So we've got Alex is presenting Fox Crescent. Dan Walker, why don't we volunteer your dad to go number 5? Okay. So can you tell Dad he's number 5?
Yeah,
and,
I'll let him know.
All right, Bob Walkna, and he's presenting, I think, phase 3 of Madawaska Shores, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
So we got number 5 is Bob. And then how about number 6 would be Daniel DiNardo, and you're going to be doing the Woodruff project.
Yes, that's right.
All right, Woodruff project. Okay, we're getting there. And Jake and Paula, what about you guys? Would you go number 7?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's my favorite number.
Which one do you want to present? I mean, you've got so many.
We were wondering if we could do a entertainment, like we don't have anything in mind, but we've been looking at sites and just a case study on how that would look.
Oh, that would be cool. Oh, I like that, Jake. Okay, well, I'll put you down as Mr. and Ms. Agritainment. All right,
Sounds
so that's
good.
number 7. Where's Jessica? She deserted us. Michael, what do you want to do? One, number 8.
Sure.
Okay, which one do you want to do?
Well, that's a good question. Let me pick the name when we get closer to it, in case the one that I'm still working on comes together.
What would be really cool to do, either Ford or Gibbons?
Yeah.
I mean, those
Okay.
are fantastic projects, and I think Ford, Michael is building these incredible apartment buildings. I think there are 3 or 4 stories, and they're in Duncan, BC. Right? I got that right, Duncan, BC, right? And,
Close, in Cowichan Valley, around Duncan.
sorry, Cowichan Valley, yeah. And they're absolutely fabulous. So I'll just put down Michael, Ford or Gibbons. Okay, you can pick one.
All right.
Because those will be fantastic case studies. And Jake and Paula are going to do agri-tainment. And I guess number 9, because she's not here, will be Jessica. All right. And I know what she's doing. She's got a couple projects. I'll get a name from her at some point. So Jessica's probably right that it's going to take more than one session, but we'll start and try and keep your presentations to about 15 minutes, if you can. I mean, if it goes longer, it just goes longer. I'm not going to yank you off the stage. But 15 minutes of presentation and then 5 or 10 minutes of Q&A. So maybe we can do one in 20 or 25 minutes. And in 2 hours we could do 4. So Jessica might be right. We need an extra session, and the second session might go over a little longer, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun to see. And you guys are really, I think you've really mastered a lot of the material from what I can tell. So I think that'll be great. Now I have a question for you guys. I will, if you want, I will set a final exam. It won't be very hard. It'll just be a fill in the blanks kind of thing. Is it is the cap rate on a $500,000 duplex that makes $30,000? What's the cap rate? Is it 6%? Is it 8%? I mean, you guys will figure it out in a second. I mean, it's going to be very simple. So it'll be an hour-long exam, but at least it gives me the ability then to mark it and then give you a diploma. So does everybody want to spend an hour doing an exam? It'll all be just the material from the course, so you don't have to do any extra reading. So just put in the chat box, yes or no. If no is no, that's fine. But I think long after I go play my harp up, the fact you got a certificate back in 2022 from Prof. Bruce will be worth something, I think. So just put in the chat box if you don't mind, guys. Yes, if you want to take the exam, and if you don't, that's fine. So Jake is a yes.
Is the exam open book? Just kidding. Just
so actually, I'll tell you how I do. No, that's a good question. I'll tell you how I do the exam, Karina. What I do is I literally send you the exam, probably be 30 or 35 questions. Some of you guys will finish it in like 30 minutes. Some will take 45, but nobody will take longer than an hour. So I send you the exam literally 10 minutes before we start, and we do it on Zoom. So I can actually watch you, so it really is an open book, but I'm not going to, I'm not going to be bent out of shape if you have a few cheater notes, but you know how to calculate a cap rate, and all the other stuff will be easy. I'll ask a question like, what does NIMBY stand for? Not in my backyard. And I'll give you answers, not in my backyard, or never interest more bodies yearly. I mean, I'll make up something. So it'll be very, very simple, but it gives me, the right to say, okay, you've listened, you got 75% or better on the final exam. All of you guys will be in the 80s and 90s. Some of you get 100%, I guess. And then you get a graduation certificate. So it'll be easy. It'll be done in an hour. So I send it to you. It's just a Word document. You put, you answer A, B, C, or D to each question. Then you send it back to me. I mark it, and you get your nice, certificate. So it is actually monitored by me, at least in theory. Okay. So let's see, and I'll go in the chat box and see how many people. Daniel and Dan are yes. Dave is a yes. Michael is a yes. Karina is a yes. Jake and Taylor is a yeah. Jake Taylor is a yes. Okay, well, good. I'll do it then. So put in your calendars. Okay, the case studies will be November 23rd, starting at 11 Eastern time, and then put the final exam. We're going to do it just before Christmas, guys. December 21st. At noon Eastern time. So, and it'll be lunchtime thing if you're super busy. So Jessica, we're going to do a final exam on December 21st, so just before Christmas, at noon Eastern time, in just 1 hour. You guys will ace it, no problem. It'll just be a multiple choice or multiple guess, and it'll be an hour, and that gives me the right to give you a certificate because I've got some definitive proof that you paid attention. And it's just based on the material. All right, so December 21st, noon Eastern time, 9 a.m. Pacific. And then the case studies will start November 23rd at 11 a.m. Eastern time, 8 a.m. Pacific time. And Jessica, I think you're right. We'll probably need a second session, but we'll see how we go. And then I'll schedule another session between November 23rd and December 21st so we can finish everything before Christmas. Okay, that's good. All right, so I asked you guys if you had any questions that I hadn't addressed in the course, and I got two. I got one from Bob Walkner, and one from Karina, and I'm going to go over those quickly, and then we're going to turn to a final lecture and get you out of here by 1 Eastern time. Karina asked, what do I see in terms of market conditions over the next while, I guess 2 years, and what's the way forward as a land developer? Karina really likes being a land developer. She's not afraid of zoning. She's willing to take on, yeah, good question, exactly. She's willing to take on, you know, these entrenched bureaucracies, and she's got guts, and I admire that. And Karina, you remember the 4 ways to get poor. One of them is to become a land developer. So, you know, I really admire your guts and your courage to go ahead with it. Karina, I don't know if you remember that I did send you, as you know, part of what I've been trying to do for the last almost 4 months now is send you guys, not just lecture, but send you guys things that I do on a daily basis that I think would help you. And one of the things I did send was what happens if there's World War III. I don't know if you remember seeing this, but I sent this out to you guys. What happens, yeah, it went to all of you guys and a few others. What happens if we end up in World War III, or short of a nuclear war? And I think we're going into a time of great uncertainty, Karina. Interest rates are crazy, and we pretty much can't do anything on the cost side as real estate professionals. You know, you can't call up Enbridge. You've heard me say this before. You can't call up Enbridge and ask them to cut the price of a cubic foot of natural gas. They're not going to pay any attention to any of us. You can't do anything about interest rates. And unfortunately, today, the market for investors is drying up. And cap rates, selling cap rates are going up, so prices are coming down. So you can't really sell. Do you understand, Karina? You can't really sell to get out of a jam. That might be very difficult to do. And you can't really do anything about your costs, or very little. So the only thing that you can do, or I can do as a land developer, or as a real estate developer, or as a portfolio owner, is look at the revenue side. And it looks like after 9.5 years of coaching, being primarily focused on the revenue side, the world is coming to me now. And what I mean by that is other people have realized that you can't do much about your costs. And so if you're going to go ahead with any sort of real estate project, you have to look at the revenue side with brand new eyes. So all the stuff you've heard me say now for months about animation is really coming home to roost. I don't know if that helps you, but I think that's true. Now, here's some good news, and you've heard me say this before too, is that the demand for rental apartments is going to go up, especially in places like Canada and Australia, which have really strong immigration programs. You know, Canada will be accepting 500,000 immigrants a year by 2025. So rents are going to go up. And the other thing, and this is relevant to you, Jake and Paula, on your agritainment thing, is small supply chains are going to get a lot shorter. We can no longer rely on even our closest trading partner, like the United States. During the pandemic, they refused to share their supply of vaccines. And I can tell you, if we had had a surplus of vaccines and had we not agreed to share them with the Americans, they would have rained royal hell on Canada. I'm telling you that. They're, you know, if you know anything about Americans, they can be quite, they can be bullies. But they decided, even though they could have vaccinated all of Mexico and all of Canada, their closest trading partners, they decided, no, we're going to hog the vaccines for ourselves. So Canada, along with many other countries, will have to be more self-reliant, and supply chains will get shorter. We can't rely on China. We can't rely on the United States. We can't rely on anybody but ourselves. And what does that have to do with the price of rice? Well, one of the things that I'm predicting is that the demand for agricultural land is going to go up humongously. All right, and we're going to have to be focused on, you know, greenhouses, because Canada's a cold place. We're going to have to be focused on local food production. And one of the things that I'm working on right now, Jake and Paula, if you want to reach back to me, I have a client of mine is developing a sports academy. You may recall he's developing something similar to what they have in France. And it'll be a tennis academy and a pickleball academy and probably a paddle tennis academy as well, plus other sports. So it'll be, but it will be on farmland. And the way that you can justify that, how do you get, you know, really basically commercial tourism uses on agricultural land? It's because, at least in the city of Ottawa, agritainment is included as part of the permitted uses of agricultural land. Not rural land, but agricultural land, provided that the main source of income, not main source of income, the main focus is still agricultural use. So what Sean Sweeney is going to do with his 90 or 100-acre farm is he's going to make sure that the farm stays in farm production, but at the same time, agritainment will be, you know, his training facilities, his paddle tennis courts, his pickleball courts, his tennis courts, and other facilities. That's what he's doing. And we have a model that I think I've explained in this class. I can't remember it. I do so many different things, so I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure I went over it. Is that what Sean will do to keep the 100 acres of agricultural land in actual agricultural production is he'll divide the farm up into very small micro gardens with their own bunkies. The bunkies are so small they don't even need a building permit. So you can get yourself a nice little sleeping cabin, sleeps 4 people, and maybe a 2,500 or 5,000 square foot garden plot. And instead of making $8,000 or $10,000 a year from his agricultural production, he'll probably make $150,000 a year. Yeah, that is a really different. So farmland, I think, will be in greater demand, and I am actually seeing this model working in the States and in Canada. As I said, Karina, cash flow and animation ideas to raise property revenues will be extremely important going forward. Now, the next one here, Karina, this is particularly relevant to you, is I do think if you're going to be a land developer, there will be buying opportunities of historical importance in the next 2 years. You know, buy when everybody else is selling, right? I mean, it's easy to say, it's harder to do, but there will be incredible opportunities. So, Karina, I bought 65 acres of industrial land in Canada, which is the west end of Ottawa, in the last 2 recessions ago. So that would have been, I think, 1993, 94. It was a really bad recession. I bought 65 acres of industrial land for 15 cents a square foot. We have not seen a price of 15 cents a square foot for industrial land in Ottawa since the Great Depression of the 1930s. And everybody told me, oh, Bruce, you're crazy. There's no demand for industrial land. You know, you're out of your mind. So if you think about it, 65 acres times 43,560, that's about 2.8 million square feet times 15 cents. Means I spent about $425,000 buying 65 acres of industrial land. Nobody else wanted it. Everybody told me I was nuts. Well, we came out of that recession 2 or 3 years later, and I sold part of that to Terry Matthews for his new golf course and hotel that he built in Canada, and he paid $6.50 a square foot. So when you buy land at 15 cents and you sell it at $6.50 2 or 3 years later, you don't have to figure out your cap rate or your internal rate of return. It's insanely good. You don't have to take it from me. You do not have to calculate a darn thing. So I ended up with 65 acres times 43,560 times 650. Yeah, just over 18 million bucks. Okay. Think about that. Now, unfortunately, all that money went into the hockey team because, I've said to you before, hockey teams are like the old steam engines. You shovel the coal and it burns, right? Only in this case, you're shoveling the money in and you never get it back. But you and Dave are much smarter than me, and you presumably won't buy a National Hockey League team, right? But you guys, I'm not kidding. There will be historic opportunities to buy. Now, some of the other things that we've all talked about, I think tiny house living, making do with less, will be a big thing. I just rented a 3-bedroom apartment to a nice young woman. She's a single mom, and she has her mother living with her, and she has a roommate, so she can afford the $2,500 a month because it's split 3 ways. So we're all going to make do with less. And then all the small stuff, I think, like the mini storage, the mini office, the co-working space, all of that stuff, I think, will continue. And then some of the other things that we'll see is part of the making do with less is that people will want experiences rather than more stuff. All right. And so if you have a glamping facility, or you have some other kind of tourist stuff going on that gives people a real experience. When my wife and I, and I'll stop sharing for a moment, when my wife and I went to Hawaii some years ago, she booked us into the Kahala Hilton or something like that, the top hotel in the chain, right, of islands there. I hated it. And I said to my wife, Dawn, why did you book us in here? She said, well, Michael Douglas stays here. He's a big Hollywood star, or at least he was back then. I couldn't care less if Michael Douglas or the King of Iran. I guess they don't have a king anymore. But anyway, the king himself, King Charles, stayed there. I don't care. So after a couple of days there, and by the way, this is quite a long time ago, a breakfast for 2 was $55 US back then. And today, I don't know what it would be, but probably $150 for a breakfast, which wasn't actually that good. So I said to her, let's get out of here. Oh, really? Where are we going? So I booked, we did a trail ride, we did on horseback. We went on quite a long trail, a couple of days to get in. And at the end of the island where we were staying, there were these cabins overlooking one of the bays there. They were modest cabins, and we had our horses, and we had a wonderful 2 weeks, staying in a pretty rustic place, right? And it was a hell of a lot more fun than staying in a hotel and spending ridiculous amounts of money. At least I thought so. And I think she did too. We got a set of twins out of that deal. All right. But my twins don't like hearing me say that, by the way. But Matthew and Miriam came from that particular trip. So I think we did pretty well. So there, if you look back, Karina, to that note that I sent out, there's more in there as to what is going to happen, or at least what I think is going to happen in the next 2 years. So it will be a great time to buy real estate. And you're going to have to pay even more attention to the animation stories I've been telling. Is that helpful? Okay. And then Bob asked me, Bob Walken, unfortunately he's not here, but Daniel, perhaps tell your dad. He asked me, what do I think of some of the recent changes the Ontario government is making to Ottawa's official plan and also to the Planning Act? And again, I'm not a political person. I don't belong to any political party, but what Mr. Ford is doing for all of us on this call here, if you're active in Ontario, is revolutionary. It is revolutionary. And I just sent you before we started a note from I sent it to you by email, so you'll have it when you see it. A note as to what the implications of Bill 23 are. And I'm just trying to find it now, if I can find it. Yes, here it is. Oh, this is not what I wanted. Well, I'll be able to find it. So just give me another moment. So I put it in your booklet. Remember this booklet that I told you guys about that I'm making for you? Every time I send you something, I put it in this booklet. So also before Christmas, you'll get this, the home run, a workbook. And right now, if you look down the lower left, it's 126 pages. So I've been sending you a lot of stuff. I apologize, but it will be your workbook to remember this course. You paid for it, you've done the work, most of it now. You will have it for a long time. It has all the links in it, all the emails in it, all the assignments in it. It's pretty comprehensive. And what I did this morning, and it will be on your email, is I put in the workbook and I sent it to you as well. This is the best summary. I apologize for just whipping through it here, but this is the best summary of what Bill 23 means. Sorry, it's long. So this is written by, I think, two lawyers, Max Laskin and Zachary Fleischer, who I think have a really good understanding of what Bill 23, Ontario Bill 23 means. Their headline, and lawyers usually don't put headlines like this: seismic changes to Ontario's land use planning framework proposed. Seismic. They don't, lawyers, to get a couple of lawyers to say that, it must have been really difficult, or maybe they didn't come up with a headline, but it is really, truly revolutionary. And this is my title I gave it: Defanging NIMBYites, not my backyard types, and defanging planners, plus a great deal more. Essentially what the province of Ontario has concluded under Mr. Ford, and I believe that he is right, or they are right, that the only way to solve the lack of housing, the lack of affordable housing, is to increase supply. There's no other way. And it was my opinion that it was virtually impossible to increase the supply in the current system. Between urban planners working for municipalities and private planners and all the consulting groups and all the conservation authorities and all of the other upper tier authorities, we have a system that is broken, and it takes up to a decade to get a project approved, if you can get it approved at all. And so what I sent to you here was this act, or at least the summary of what this is in this act: more homes built faster. And let me give you an example, and Jake and Paula, you'll be particularly interested in this, and I think Daniel DiNardo and Alex as well, plus the other guys on the call. They're now saying that they will exempt from site plan control developments up to 10 units. I'm a broken record on this. The fact that I couldn't get my daughter's one measly bunkie built next to the barn because I had to do a full site plan. I'm told that when Bill 23 passes, I will be able to reapply for my building permit. And if they don't grant it to me, they will be offside with their own legislation. So I'm pretty sure now I'm going to get my bunkie done. Yay, thank you, Karina. Thank you, Paula. I feel better already. But the scope of this legislation is incredible. Prohibit third-party appeals of most planning decisions. That's the end of the NIMBYs. Reduce most development charges, which are humongous in Ontario. Expand opportunities for stratified and encumbered parkland dedications. Remove planning authority from most upper-tier municipalities. And that's in the GTA. Require municipalities to update their zoning bylaws in respect of provincial policies. Very important. Introduce a use it or lose it approach for heritage listings. So if the city doesn't do something on a heritage listing, the heritage listing goes out, you can tear the thing down and build something else. This one is particularly important, I think, for most of us who are not, if you're building an Amazon fulfillment center, 1 or 2 million square feet, you're going to go through the site plan process. But if you're building a 10-plex, you're not, at least from what I understand. So I'm not going to spend the entire lecture dealing with that, but that is something that I don't think anyone expected. I talk to a lot of private planners on a day-to-day basis in Ontario and elsewhere, and they tell me the planning process was terrible last year, it's worse this year, and it'll be worse next year. They've been saying that now for probably 30 years. And for the first time, at least in Ontario, we might say the planning system was terrible last year, it's awful this year, but might be better next year. Now, there's a lot of opposition to this. And what you're going to hear is you're going to hear people say, oh my God, this is urban sprawl. This is bad for the environment. But that is complete BS, guys. It is. I'm sorry. In most cases, people are either misled or they're misleading us. The reason that most people don't like this is that if we make more land available for housing and we make the process faster, the big developers are going to have more competition. They don't want that. And the sitting homeowner who loves the fact that his or her house goes up 20% a year isn't going to like the fact that maybe their house goes up 3 or 4% a year instead of 20% a year because there's more supply. It's just selfishness. That's it. So if you care about young people buying a house, if you care about developers and entrepreneurs like us having an opportunity to actually build something, then you should support this bill, in my opinion. Now, Alex is saying something here. Let me see it, Alex. Does the tiny home concept apply to city areas? I haven't seen many examples trying to visualize different implementations. So, Alex, when the city of Ottawa was doing their new official plan, they hired me as a consultant to brief them on it. And I got a number of things included, even before the official plan became official. For example, the coach house bylaw, I had a hand in writing that for the city of Ottawa. And yeah, Daniel, I can count on you to find the protest movement. So Alex, there were a number of very positive things that the city did on its own. For example, they did legalize, because they wanted to be in conformity with provincial policies, that you could have a duplex and a coach house. So you could have a house with an in-home apartment and a coach house. So you could have 3 units in the city of Ottawa, even before Bill 23. Now, Bill 23 might mean 4 units. I'm not sure yet. Okay, but even before Bill 23, you could get 3 units in the city of Ottawa. So they did a number of good things. But I also asked them to include a provision to allow developers like Karina and Dave to build tiny house communities in Ottawa. I said there's a tremendous demand for it. I know people are doing it now. You can go onto properties in the rural area and you'll go up in the back 40 acres and you'll find a dozen tiny homes parked up there, all illegally, Alex. So I asked the city to approve it and they said, absolutely no way. We're not going to do it. So at least to this point, we have not been able to get that approved. Now, whether Bill 23 will impact that, I don't know. Any other questions before we move on?
What are the odds that if the Liberals come back, they'll scrap it or do something stupid? We don't know.
Well, that's politics, right, Daniel? I mean, again, I'm not a political person, but there's people are selfish. I mean, human beings are selfish. I'm sure I am too. I'm sure I'm selfish, like everybody is. But the difference between a selfish person and a person who maybe has a little bit of wisdom is that they actually know they're selfish. I think a lot of the NIMBYs, the not my backyard types, they convince themselves that oh my gosh, if somebody builds a house in the rural part of Ottawa, that's sprawl. You know, and if there's an increase in supply of land and increase in supply of housing, that's sprawl. You know, now you may have heard me say this before, but Dennis Miller said it best. You know, an environmentalist is somebody who has a cabin in the woods. A developer is somebody who would like to have a cabin in the woods, right? And the problem is that some people are just doing it because they're mean, but some people are doing it because they're selfish and they don't recognize that they're selfish, right? And this is the last thing I'll show you guys before we move on. This is what the province did to the city of Ottawa's planning map. All right, so this was what the city of Ottawa approved as their official plan. So you can see that there's some purple here, a little bit of purple here. Can you see my cursor moving around, Daniel? And a little bit of purple here, and a little bit of purple here. So our mayor and council did expand the urban boundary a little tiny bit. So they did recognize that we need to have more land for development. But they're afraid, many politicians, Daniel, are afraid of a backlash from the NIMBYs, from their political base, right? Who are mostly homeowners. So they did a little bit and they got away with. The province, I guess last week or within the last couple of weeks, said, no. We're not going to accept your official plan. And this is what they did. So now, let's see, what did they, oh, maybe, have I got it wrong? Oh yeah, I got it wrong, sorry. Now what they did, Daniel, was, you see all this sort of, I don't know, is that pinky purpley color? So all of this stuff here with the cross hatching in it, here and here and here and here and here and here, they added hundreds of hectares of additional land because the province has recognized that the only real way to provide more housing and more affordable housing is to increase the supply. So you're going to see the province step in Toronto, in Ottawa, in Hamilton, in London, in Stratford, and say, okay, you miserable SOBs on council and all you NIMBYs, we're not accepting it. We're just going to change it. So Daniel, once that is in place, once that becomes part of, you know, for the Liberal government, if the Liberals come back in another few years, for them to take away those rights. In Canada, if you take away those rights, you have to compensate people. That would cost the province of Ontario, if it's Ottawa, Hamilton, Toronto, London, Stratford, et cetera, would be tens of billions of dollars. And it's very unlikely even a new premier is going to say, oh yes, let's spend $100 billion torpedoing all of these private developments. Do you understand?
Yeah, I mean, the concern might be just to get the job done before the rules change again.
Well, I think once your land is zoned, you know, for development, to take away those rights would invite a huge amount of litigation. I mean, in the tens of billions of dollars, possibly in the hundreds of billions of dollars. The province, the next provincial government, whoever it is, would probably not tolerate that. They might reimpose the same rules as we had before. They can do that, but they're probably not going to take away any rights that have been granted. All right, okay. So I did my best to answer the questions. Thank you very much, Karina, and thank you, Bob, wherever you are today, for that. So what I wanted to show you today, and this is our last formal lecture, was I wanted to show you a couple of other models. I want to make sure that we haven't just dealt with the regular kind of models. You know, what do you do with a duplex, a triplex? What do you do with a 35-unit building? We've done a lot of that, but I wanted to show you a couple of other things just to give you a flavor for something else. And this is a local company here in Ottawa called Glenview Homes. And they've been around in one form or another. They were mostly a commercial firm, but now they have switched to being a home builder. And they wanted to start a new division of stacked townhouses. And I'll tell you what a stacked townhouse is in a moment. And one of my young clients, who's also a young friend, he would be in his late 30s now, is actually thinking about applying to be the general manager of this new division. And I think he's actually in discussions about taking the job. So he asked me what I thought about it. I said, well, I don't know. Let me have a look at their model. And I didn't really like their model. And I suggested that if he's going to take the job, he should probably change the model. Okay. Anyway, this is their ad. This is an opportunity to start a new division within an established and rapidly growing local home builder. If you have knowledge and confidence, aren't afraid of a challenge, and are looking to make a lasting mark, then Glenview Homes may be exactly what you didn't know you were looking for. That's just a PR statement. All right. Bigger is not better. Better is better. They didn't make that up. They borrowed that. And here's, for example, one of their subdivisions called the Commons in Orleans, which is in the east end of Ottawa. And they say, this is again their PR stuff on the left-hand side of the screen. They say Glenview Homes is focused on building not just beautiful homes, but also strong, vibrant communities. Well, that's a piece of horse manure, in my opinion. Look at this plan. This plan is pathetic, in my opinion. Now, if the boys, I know the boys who run it at Glenview, so I apologize if they ever listen to me, but I don't think it's a very good plan. We're still in Ottawa and elsewhere in the States, we're still building 3,500 homes in a row without a single job, without a corner store, without a pharmacy, without a workshop, without a place where your nanny could rent or live, or your gardener. There's no doctor's offices here. There's nothing. And even the street pattern is terrible, right? Everything is like curvilinear. Everything, it drives you crazy. The way to design subdivisions is like we did in the 1880s, the 1930s. It's a grid. Curvilinear roads are horrible to live in there. We have one subdivision in Ottawa where a friend of mine who was on the city council, he had a home there, and it was 11 left turns to get in and 11 right turns to leave. All these curvilinears, nothing connects. And it drove him crazy. Every time he was going home, he'd be counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, right? It drove him crazy. And after a couple of years, he had to sell the place. It was just driving him crazy, right? So this is an absolutely terrible plan, in my opinion. And I said to my young friend, if you're going to apply, you're going to have to change their model because it's just terrible. And here are the responsibilities of the job. You know, it's going to be a new division. They're going to be producing stacked townhouses, but there's not a single mention of the business model. GTBMR, get the business model right. That is the very fundamental thing that almost nobody in our industry does. When you're starting anything, think about what is the business model for this? Does it make sense? What's the engine of this business, right? And I hope when you do your case studies, you're thinking about that and you'll talk about it. So what are stacked townhouses? It's just like you take a two-story or even a one-story, you take a two-story townhouse and you stack another one on top of it. So you've got, you know, stacked towns, right? And they could be one story, they could be two stories, and you stack them up. There's some advantages to this, but one of the biggest disadvantages of stacked townhouses is that they are condos. Okay. And we'll talk about when is a condo not a condo. I'm going to teach you that today. But anyway, there are some advantages, and we'll talk about that. All right, what are some of the advantages of stacked townhouses? Affordability. They're cheaper to build. You get a two-story floor plan, which is good. Instead of being, you know, one or two bedroom apartment here, you've got 2 stories, which is quite nice, I think. They don't tend to go up as fast as freehold townhouses, so they don't appreciate as fast. And there are common areas. I mean, it's a condo, so you're going to be paying, they call it maintenance fees, but those are condo fees. And there's lots of regulations. Condos have more regulations than porcupines have quills. All right. And another advantage of the stacked, so there's disadvantages and advantages, is you get more yield. You can get a hell of a lot of density here. And Dave, if you're paying attention, you'll see in the next slide, Dave Wallace, you'll see what kind of densities we're talking about. It's incredible. So they're cheaper to build than freehold townhouses. Freehold townhouses are like this in there. Yeah. But they're condos. And condos don't go up in value, generally speaking, as fast as freehold do. There's way more regulation, which I already mentioned. There's much higher legal costs in forming a condo. You have to survey every cubic inch of this after it's done. So your survey costs are out of control. When you sell a freehold townhouse, you can collect the deposits as a builder and put them in your jeans and use it to fund your project. With condos, you have to put them in trust, and you don't get the deposits and you don't get any money until you finish the project and you register the condo corporation, and then you get your first dollar. It can take years. All right. So it's very, very, very difficult. And here's a typical one. This is a stacked townhouse development in Mississauga. It looks nice. And one of the nice things about stacked townhouses is, again, there are no common entries, right? So every one of these stacked units have their own individual entrances and exits to the street, which I think is a big plus. So there's pluses and minuses to this development. The other thing that Haven did when we put this program together is they divided their project into phases. And Karina, this is extremely important in terms of de-risking. So you can build one phase and then you can build a second phase, right? So you can break your project into multiple phases, so a little bit less costly, and you're not putting as many units on the market. So you're not flooding the market in that area, okay, with more units than you can sell. And here are just some numbers that Haven did with their Mississauga. Their units were as small as 485 square feet, so basically a little bigger than a micro suite, to 1570. Their maintenance fees, which is really condo fees, they estimated at 31 cents per square foot. So it means if you had a 1,570 square foot unit at 31 cents, you would be paying about $500 a month in condo fees. But again, with condo fees, you have no control over them. There can be special assessments, whatever. This was a 4-floor, so they had 2-story townhouse on top of a 2-story townhouse, but they got 60 units here, 60. And the prices went from $400,000 to $865,000, which is quite a bit of money. But in Mississauga, that would be considered a bargain. At least it was back then. So I went on Google Maps because I didn't remember how big the area was, and I measured it with Google Maps. So it's just over an acre. They got 60 units. So Dave, look at that. They got 55 units per acre. That's pretty good. If you think about, like, if you were doing a subdivision of single family homes, maybe you get 8 or 10 units per acre, right? You don't get very many. And if you're doing freehold towns, you might get 22 to 30. So if you want to really maximize your density and your yield, stacked townhouses are really actually pretty good. And they're a hell of a lot cheaper to build than, say, a 20-story or 14-story concrete structure. All right. So they're cheaper to build and you get more density, but they're condos. This is Gilles Desjardins. He's one of the billionaires I've coached. He started a company called Brigil. Gilles Desjardins is his name. And he told me something that has always stuck in my mind. I don't really like condos, he told me. And that was a big surprise because they built some. He prefers freehold towns. And I asked him why. And he said, because it's a cash and carry business. Well, he said it with a nice French accent. It's a cash and carry business. And he's a real gentleman, and he's very imaginative and creative. What he means by that is, let's say you're selling a $600,000 townhouse, you can take a $40,000 deposit when you sell it to Mr. and Mrs. Jane Q Public. You take a $40,000 deposit, which is covered by Tarion. Then when you put the footings and foundation in, you get another deposit. When you close it in, you get another deposit. And then when you complete the thing, you get the last of the money. But on a $600,000 townhouse, you could collect $400,000 while you're building the damn thing. That's a lot of money. That helps your cash flow. Am I right, Karina? Yeah, you can take 2/3. I mean, it's up to you. Now, the only part of your deposit that is covered and protected by insurance, Tarion in Ontario, is the $40,000. So if you buy a townhouse from Desjardins, from Gilles, or anybody else, and you put down $400,000 in deposits, $360,000 of that's at risk. In other words, if he goes bankrupt before he finishes, you're an unsecured creditor. You understand? So it is a risk. But if it was a condo, that money would go into trust. So as a buyer, you would be protected. But as a developer, you wouldn't get to touch that money. So all the money that you need to build your condos has to be financed, and you don't get any of your dough until you've finished the building and you've registered the condo. It could take 6 months or even a year after you finish your condo to register. So it could be 4, 5, 6, 7 years before you get any money. So Gilles doesn't really like condos, although he does build them. So what I teach is a little bit of a different model. And when I was teaching my young friend, and I told him to take this change to Glenview, is let's think about building a project with 60 stacked townhouses in it. And let's think about that as a single condo. It's not a condo, it's just a project of 60. And if Glenview, over the next number of years, is going to build, say, 20 of these, so they're going to build 1,200 units over the next decade, stacked townhouses, okay? Then each project, in my opinion, these should be rentals, because we know that the rental demand is going to be out of control as long as we're taking in 400,000 or 500,000 immigrants a year in Canada. So they should be rentals. And then what Glenview should do, if they want a cash engine, is if they build 20 projects like this, they might sell 12 of them to a REIT or an investor group or a pension fund and keep 8 for themselves. So they have some committed monthly recurring revenues, right? The holy grail of business. So instead of having to make 60 sales every time they build one of these projects and 1,200 sales over the next 10 years, maybe they have, maybe they have 12 sales. So you've reduced the number of sales you have to make, and you've hugely reduced your cost and also reduced the complexity of the whole thing. To me, it's a much better model. And so I said to him, good luck, go and do that. And the other tweak that I added to the model is I said, some of these, if you really want to de-risk it, so say Dave and Karina were doing one of these, if you really want to de-risk it, pre-sell it. And I've just done a deal with one of my developer clients where we have pre-sold, I think it was 35 units to, maybe it was more than that, maybe it's 45 units, but we pre-sold a project to an investor group for 18 million bucks, right? So he sold it, he hasn't even put the shovel in the ground. He's got the site, he's got the land, he's got the site plan approval, he's getting his building permit, but he's pre-sold it to the group. But the one thing that we had to change was we had to put in this paragraph, which we did this week, all right? Because inflation, when it's 2 or 3%, was something he could manage, but now that it's 8 or 9, maybe 10%, we have to change it. So what we did was we put this paragraph in his development management and sales agreement. If Canada's consumer price index from the start of construction shall exceed 5%, so any such increase over and above 5% shall be applied to purchase price. What does that mean? Well, the first phase was a sale of $11 million. Out of the 18, first phase is 11, second phase is 7. So the price would be $11 million plus HST, but if he starts construction early spring next year and finishes basically a little bit over a year later, and if inflation during that period is 8%, then the purchase price would be increased by $385,000. It's a way to protect him from inflation. And these numbers can change, right? But there you go. That's what we did. The other thing that a lot of my clients are doing now, a lot of my developer clients are doing, and I think, Jake, you and Paula are interested in this too, is they're entering into DMAs, development management agreements. So again, an investor group comes along and says, hey, I'd love to own, the next 60 unit stacked townhouse that you build. And would you do an agreement of purchase and sale? You might say, well, I'm a little bit unsure about my costs and the timing, so I'll develop it as a development manager on your behalf. So it means that the client is financing it, and if there's any cost overruns, they're paying for it. How do you do that? How does, say, for example, Colonnade Bridgeport enter into development management agreements? Well, they do it because they control the land. He or she who controls the land, and Karina, you already know this, he or she who controls the land controls everything. Because without a site, it's just an idea. Ideas are cheap. So the other thing that, if you don't mind, I'm going to talk about Jake and Paula, is forming your own fund, right? Which we talked about yesterday. And just before I get to that, I want to make sure you guys have read this, and I'm going to put it in the chat box just in case you haven't. I really want you guys to read about proper property management. It is a core competency. And I'll put this link in here. I hope I got it. Oh, shoot, I think I screwed up. Don't pay any attention to what I just put in there. Let me copy this. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, that's better. So I put in the chat box, proper property management. There's the link there. You should read it, okay? It details all of the revenue streams available. Most people don't know half of those. I want to make sure you guys know that. So Jake and Paula and I were talking, I think it was yesterday. Was it yesterday, Jake? Yeah. Every day seems to be a bit of a blur. We were talking about how Jake and Paula, who have an amazing number of beautiful projects on the go right now, how they're going to continue to fund it. Right now, the funding is pretty much, you know, a little bit here and a little bit there. And what Jake and Paula want to do is they want to try and come up with a formula, maybe a better formula, to start to fund their projects in a more cohesive way, make it a little bit easier on them and a little bit less stressful as well. So what we worked on yesterday was, here's Jake and Paula's company, Tartan Developments, right? This is a development company. They develop beautiful projects. Some of them they sell, some of them they keep, and if they keep it, they do property management. Of course, they do their own leasing. You know, for example, Paula is running, or will soon be running, an Airbnb hotel with quite a number of units there. Beautiful project, right? That's probably a keeper, but some of them, for example, they have some high-end executive homes. Those will probably be sold. So they make some money here. That's part of their cash engine. Property management is part of their committed monthly recurring revenues, and leasing is, of course, an important part of developing committed monthly recurring revenues. So that's kind of Tartan in a nutshell, and it's owned 100% by Jake and Paula. What I didn't want, and again, this is just my coaching, right? Jake and Paula may do something different, but this is what we talked about yesterday. What I didn't want is I didn't want any of the capital structure of Tartan Developments to be owned by anybody else, right? It's like a personal business for life. It should be owned by Jake and Paula, not Jake and Paula and Bob and Ann, right? It should be Jake and Paula, in my opinion. So I said, why don't we start something else? Let's call it Tartan Investments Inc., just a name we made up yesterday. And Tartan Investments Inc. would take money from investors, because they have a bunch of investors now anyway, but let's make it more regularized. Let's just see if we can establish something that will develop into a big fund. For example, Colony Bridgeport does exactly this. And so Colony Bridgeport is over here and very successful, makes a whole lot of money for the people who own it over here. But the funders are over here. And the funders, the investors could be a REIT, a real estate investment trust, could put 10 million into that fund. Many of them do. And for Colony Bridgeport, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe even billions, but it's a big fund. But the investors could be, you know, Aunt Mary. So it could be family and friends. It could be a trade contractor that does work for them. It could be a client that has bought a nice home from Jake and Paula that wants to put some money into real estate, but doesn't want the hassle of actually owning any. Or it could be a pension fund who says, hey, listen, I like what you're doing, Jake and Paula. Let me put $100 million in this fund. So here are the investors. They put money into this. And the initial target raise for Tartan Investments, Inc. is $1 million, which is a lot of money, but still not very much money when it comes to the development business. So that's a start, right? And so, you know, the investor puts some money in here. Maybe it's $50,000 or $100,000. And so if you had $50,000, you'd need 20 investors to chip in 50 grand each. And they get typically 8% interest for 3 years. And what I said yesterday is 75% of that money comes in as debt and 25% comes in as equity. So Tartan actually has an equity capital structure, and they get preferred shares. These are non-voting shares. So Jake and Paula will own the common shares, which are the voting shares, and the investors will have an equity interest in this, and they will have some loans to the company. The company will then secure those loans through promissory notes as opposed to mortgages. And I want you guys to really understand how important that distinction is. So typically what funders want is they want a second mortgage, right? And, or a third mortgage, and it really encumbers your property. Instead, what Tartan Fund will do, or Tartan Investments Inc. will do, is it will lend money to Tartan Developments, and they will charge maybe 10 or 12%, and they're paying 8%. So some money is left in the fund here. So the fund can make some money, but it's secured by promissory notes, not mortgages, which gives Jake and Paula over here a lot more flexibility in terms of first mortgage financings. Now, here's the most important thing from the point of view of the investors. What I suggested to Jake and Paula is, rather than giving Tartan Investments Inc. any equity in these projects down here or any equity in Tartan Developments, what you would do is you would give this company trailing revenues. And what do I mean by that? It'd be like a royalty on sales or a royalty on revenues. So let's say, just make it simple, Tartan Investments Inc. loans Tartan Developments $1 million. And Jake and Paula do another Airbnb hotel. And that Airbnb hotel makes, I don't know, $300,000 a year. It means that this fund would get 8%, 3 to 8%, those were just suggestions by me, 8% royalty on revenues forever, as long as Jake and Paula and Tartan Developments owns it. If it sells it, they get 8% or 3% or whatever it is of the sale price. So it's as if they owned 3% or 8% of the project, except it's just a royalty, right? So it makes the capital structure of both companies very simple. This is a very powerful way to organize things, all right? Jake, I don't suppose you've had time to talk to your lawyer yet, have you?
No, not yet. Paul and I were just working on some stuff this morning on it, but we're going to do that this afternoon.
All right. And one of the things I said to Jake and Paul yesterday is, look, I have a lot of respect for some lawyers, but you also have to be careful not to substitute anybody's judgment, including mine, for your own. You're the CEO of your own life. Your lawyer, your banker, your accountant, even your coach is not the boss. You're the boss of you. All right. So I'm a little concerned about what the lawyer will say, because lawyers like belt and suspenders, they like to protect themselves. And so they might say, well, wait a second, this has some holes in it. And it probably does. But the fact is that dozens of my clients use variations of this, and it works really, really well. Now, the key thing is that the people you're investing with are honorable, right? Because, there's lots of room for shenanigans here, trust me, because you don't have a mortgage on any properties. If Jake and Paula wanted to, they could take all the money from the Tartan Investments Inc. fund, and go to Las Vegas and blow it gambling, right? There's no mortgages, right? And just party on until the money runs out. Of course, that's fraud, and you can go to jail for that, but people do that. So you have to have trust. But whether you have a mortgage or you have a promissory note, you shouldn't be involved with anybody you don't trust. I don't care how good you think your mortgage is. You should be very careful. All right. So this is kind of what we're thinking of. Now, something else came up in this model. I said, property management and leasing and sales. Paula is a realtor. There's no reason why this company can't provide those services to third parties. And also, this fund, it doesn't just have to have one client. For example, if Jake and Paula had $100 million, I bet you Michael and I and maybe Karina and Dave would be knocking on your door and saying, Jake and Paula, would you fund Michael's project? Would you fund Bruce's project, Karina and Dave's, right? So I'm hopeful that this company will be a big success, and I'm sure it will be, and you'll have a few $100 million there, and you might consider taking on third-party clients, all right? Third parties requiring funding, as long as you like and trust them. All right, that's enough. All right, so there's a couple of more things I'll put in the chat box. Development manager role. I've sent it to you before, but I'm going to send it to you again. Why this is crucial and what you should put in a development management agreement. So these are more Dropbox links. I'll put them in the chat box and you can download those as well. Hopefully that got through. All right, let's see what else we got here. All right, and Karina and Dave, if you don't mind, I'm going to also talk about some of the stuff that we did on your project on Montreal Road. I don't mean to steal your thunder, but I wanted to show you guys, the rest of our team here, what can be done if you're a little bit creative. You know, I started off answering Karina's question as best I could, and you know, what happens if the economy goes off the rails, which it looks like it's doing now, is we have to rely more and more on animation. We have to boost our revenues, otherwise the increase in interest rates are going to overwhelm us. All right, so that's enough of that. But when Karina and Dave and I were looking at their project on Montreal Road, which you're going to hear from Dave, you know, in the next couple of weeks anyway, it's a really interesting site. It's on Montreal Road. So here's the road where my cursor is moving back and forth. It's kind of almost a triangular site. It's quite deep and it's interesting. And what most architects would do with this site is they would put in, you know, I don't know, a 9-story apartment building here, and that would be the end of it, right? They'd say, here's, and what they would do is they would put, you know, some commercial at grade. All right, so where you can sort of see my cursor moving around here, this would be, you know, square box, 9 stories high. That would be what you get from most architects. And one of the things I want you guys to take away from this course is that your planner, your architect, your architectural technologist, your engineers, your surveyors, all of your consultants, your friends, none of them know anything about animation. The only people who know anything about animation are on this course and the people I've taught. That's it. There's about 2,500 people in North America and a few overseas that know something about it. So what I said to Dave and Karina was, wait a second. What I think you should do is, you know, you're going to have this 9-story building here. Maybe you should add in the back here some stacked townhouses. Why would you do that? Karina asked me, why would you do that? Well, I did a project like that, Blue Heron Co-op, which has, I think, a 4 or 5-story building in front, and it has townhouses in the back. Very successful. It's a rental project. Very successful. And stacked townhouses are very, very, very efficient. And again, this would not be condos. This would all be rentals, right? So maybe this orange square would be stacked townhouses. And then, you know, you have some green space back here, and you know I like playland, right? Pickleball, bocce, cornhole, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then I also talked about what if on the first 2 floors facing the main road, you did 2-story townhouses embedded in the tower. And I don't think, Dave, you sent me yet an email requesting me to show you some pictures of that. I should have put it in here, but you'll have to send me that email reminding me.
Yeah,
So,
sorry about that. I will.
Yeah, you should. And so let me show you what I'm getting at. So I'm a terrible drawer, so this is the best I could do. So here's your 9-story building. And, you know, what is an apartment or a condo at grade worth? Not very much. On the 2nd floor, a little bit more, but people like to be up higher away from traffic. But if you were to put embed townhouses into this 9-story tower, maybe they have some private gardens here, and there's the road in front. These things are fantastic. In Vancouver, where I have some clients who are doing this, they'll have a 30-story building up here, but the ground floor condos, which were previously just giveaways, they'll build these beautiful executive townhomes with tiny little gardens in front, facing the main streets, and they'll sell those for $3.5 to $5.5 million each. If they were to put condos there, they'd have a condo here, and they'd have a condo here. They might get 400,000 or 500,000 each, so they might get a million. It's incredible. So what I'm trying to get across to you guys is this animation stuff should start right, even at the moment that you're thinking about a project. How can we really change the equation so that we push the cap rates up, hopefully to 8 or 8.5% rather than 4.5%? The other thing that I suggested to Dave and Karina, which some of my clients are doing, is putting workshops in the basement of this building. So you go half a level down, And that's where your parking is, underneath this building here, but it's not just parking. I mentioned to Dave and Karina yesterday, I think it was yesterday, that a number of parking garages that I'm familiar with are half empty. More and more young people are not buying cars or not learning how to drive. So if you can put some workshops in the basement of these units, your apartment again is the liability, and the workshop where you can, run your registered massage therapy practice, run your physiotherapy practice, run your coaching business. That's an asset. So I wanted to show you this. Karina, I think I showed you and Dave this particular development, but I thought I would, I'm sorry I'm repeating it, but I wanted to show the rest of the class. This is a very nondescript apartment building in a small town called Gatineau, Quebec, at 60 Carillon. I don't think I spelled that right. And this is a young architect I trained a long time ago. His name is Eric Rossman, and I'm up on the roof with Eric, taking a picture of him while he's taking a picture of whatever. And so this is the common entrance here. And Eric and his wife, Sarah, bought this building, and they said, well, we don't make very much money. What can we do with it? So I went through it, and it really was quite a blah building. There really wasn't a whole lot that could be done to animate it. There are a few little minor things that we could do. But as we were leaving the building, so this is another view of the building. As we were leaving the building, I said to Eric and Sarah, what is this? Oh, they said, it's just an ugly basement. It's nothing. And I said, well, let me go look at that with you. So we went down into the basement here. You can see the overhead door here. So you kind of go down this ramp and into the basement. And we found this. This is their basement. It's got 10-foot ceiling height, and it is perfectly suited to dividing it up into 13 small workshops. It's ideal. And if you think about it, if you have a workshop down there and you have to bring some materials down there, or you have to take some product out, you've got that little landing and you've got the overhead door. It's absolutely ideal. I said, oh my gosh, this is a gold mine. And they said, really? Yes. So I said, what if you were to, they had two basement apartments, which were absolutely horrible. I'm sure they were illegal basement apartments. They were getting $450 a month for each apartment. You can imagine what they were like. I said, demolish them and put 13 maker spaces here, or workshops. And so here's what happened. They put in 8 200 square foot workshops and 5 bigger ones, renting for $495 a month to $685 a month. And it cost them, I can't remember what it cost. It's in here somewhere. Anyway, oh yeah, it cost them about $175,000 to build the workshops down there, $13,500 each, just adding some light, and it's all plywood, right? So, it's not drywall. They ended up with a 37% cap rate, and it added about $66,000 of net operating income, 100,000 gross, 66,000 in net operating income. At a fair market value cap rate, which their appraiser gave them of 8%, it lifted the value of the building by over $800,000. So they were able to take out, about a year and a half later, almost $500,000 in tax-free cash because they added these workshops. That is an amazing, amazing change, right? And I've got some bigger builders now who are looking at this. They're serious about having 1 or 2 levels or 3 levels underground, but instead of just being 2 levels or 3 levels of parking, it'll be parking and workshops.
Bruce, what is in the tech? What is in the tech packages? Like, is that just internet, or is it other?
Well, our tech packages, Karina, what we put in our tech packages is we have internet and Wi-Fi. We have Nest thermostats, which work on an app, so you can change the temperature. We have door locks that you can access with your phone. We have really good speakers. We have televisions that remain in the apartments, are part of the fixtures. We have Prime Video and Netflix, and we have Spotify. So we go all out with our tech packages, and we charge quite a bit of money for it. It's a profit center for us. But for tech package could be just, listen, we'll give you Wi-Fi for $85 a month. But ours are a little bit more elaborate, and we charge $155 a month, but we have wonderful technology. We use Google Mesh so that there are no holes in our Wi-Fi either. All right. So, and I'll tell you something, Karina, when I first started to offer tech packages, I did get some pushback from tenants. And I'd say to somebody, well, I don't want to pay $155 for all this stuff. I don't use the internet. I said, well, that's fine. You don't have to. You're not renting this apartment. I said, what do you mean? I said, it comes with the apartment. If you don't want it, you don't want the apartment, I'm okay with that. You go somewhere else. And they said, well, actually, you know, I do like the apartment. Well, you've got a great tech package then. And we operate it, we maintain it, and it's pretty much always on. We have very high, you know, we have a very good technology guy who works with us. His name's Abe DeHady. He keeps it, our networks humming, and we make money at it. But I can tell you, Karina, it saved our bacon in the pandemic. Our tenants just love the fact. I remember I actually rented one of our apartments to a lady. She was moving from Peterborough. And this was a little bit more expensive than I think she wanted. And I said, oh, okay, great. Why do you want this? Well, I wanted the tech package. I said, oh, this was in the early days of the tech package. And she was a huge Game of Thrones fan. And she said, I can't miss an episode. I can't miss an episode. What she liked about it is the moment I move in, I don't even have to put a TV on the wall. I just turn it on, you know, to HBO, and I've got Game of Thrones. I won't miss an episode. I mean, she was addicted to the series, which is fine. So it turned into a huge plus for us even before the pandemic and ever since. So we like doing it, but not everybody likes doing it, but it's up to you. All right, let's go back. All right. All right, we've dealt with that. Yeah, we dealt with this too. I don't want to go over that. One of the things I've asked you as well, this is just really a reminder to make sure you look at this video. It's maybe a little bit dated, but it's about how to do proper residential leasing. I did it with Tristan Peltier, a young realtor who I have a lot of respect for, and it's still pretty good. I think you should, if you have time, it'll teach you some things about residential leasing that maybe you didn't know. There's more to it than most people understand. I wanted to also, just because it's kind of a summary now, we're just going back. You guys, I wanted to show you a couple of other models that I really like. And you've already seen this project before. This is the one where I said to you, you can get, you know, free land. This is where Alex Long and Frankie Oliver bought this 21-acre site. It's industrial. They severed off two pieces here, sold them off, and, you know, basically they got 13 acres of land for free. Right? Took them about a year, but they got it for free. But what I wanted to show you was one of the buyers of one of these pieces. He wants to build industrial condos. Most people don't know what industrial condos are. Well, they're just like residential condos, but they're for industrial users. And this is the project, and I'm coaching him on it now too. And so basically, he's going to build 4 buildings like this. Each building is 6,000 square feet and probably has 22-foot ceiling heights, right? So basically, this is a condo unit. And if you could see the back, I don't have a picture of the back, but if you could see the back, it has the overhead door. So you might have an office in the front or an office in the mezzanine, but in the back, you'll have a 2-story warehouse. It's very, very simple. I was in this business before, and I love this business. It's much simpler business than building homes, Jake. You know, a home probably needs 25 to 35 trades. To build something like this, maybe you have 15 or 16 trades. These are snap together buildings. They're really, really simple. It's just a great business. I liked it anyway. So Henri came to me and said, I would like to do this, and I need some coaching because you've been in this business, Bruce. Will you help me? I said, sure, I love this business. So he's going to, each building is 6,000 square feet, and each industrial condo is 1,500 square feet. All right. One of the things that we're doing And just want to show you some of the stuff that comes up in land development that you might not know. When you're doing land development in the rural area, you have to provide firefighting, right? So if you have a mini storage business in the rural area, or you have any other kind of commercial development, building a little plaza in the rural area, you have to provide, I think it's 20,000 gallon tanks, so that if there's a fire in your building, the fire department can come, try and put the fire out. But if they don't have enough water, they plug into the tanks and they keep spraying water on the building until they put the fire out. But this particular site has a large amount of surface water. So what we're going to do is we're going to develop a stormwater pond, because we need stormwater anyway, and we're going to use that for firefighting. To save them about $100,000, maybe $150,000. And this is an example, I've used it before. This is an example of what's called a dry hydrant. I don't know if any of you know what that is, but this is a hydrant that actually goes down in the ground and goes into this large pond here. Instead of having to, put in huge tanks, you can just use, if you have a pond like this, you can use the pond for firefighting, right? So there you go. All right, we've already talked about that. Here's some market research that we did on this particular type of model. They call this is very recent, they call this self-storage or mini storage hotter cousin. Now more than ever, handyman contractors and e-commerce outfits need small bay warehouses and workshops. I mean, I obviously like this because it supports my own conclusions. And if you're interested, I'll just put that in the chat box too, so you have it. There's a link there, you can read the story. So I said to Henri, I love this model. If I were younger, I would certainly do more of it myself. And that's what I sent him in terms of market research. There's a tremendous demand for this industry. And here's one of the industrial condos I built, 25 years ago. And I mean, it looks remarkably similar to what Henri is proposing. Now, you'll notice that almost all of the industrial condos, certainly the ones I built, have the potential to put a mezzanine in. Because today it's expensive. Even these are expensive to build, maybe $250 a square foot or even $300 a square foot compared to what they used to be, which was $80 a square foot. You can average down your costs by putting in a mezzanine, right? Because mezzanines are cheap to build, buildings are expensive. So we put windows in on the second floor, even though many of these buildings do not have a mezzanine, but we did put them in. So if you ever built a mezzanine, you'd have some light up there. I wanted to show you again how important this animation stuff is. And this is a terrible sketch, and I apologize. You probably won't even be able to follow it, but I'll explain it as best I can. So this is the ground floor plan here. All right. So here's your 2-story industrial condo. There's the entrance. Windows up here, windows here. It's got enough room for a mezzanine. And in this particular case, what is typical is you put a mezzanine sort of in the middle here. The far part of this would have an overhead door and a man door or person door here. So you'd have 2-story storage here. You'd have a little atrium here, and you come in here. This is the main entrance. Now, this is interesting. You come in here, and this then is an entrance to the ground floor, and there's another entrance to go up these stairs to the mezzanine. What this means is you can have an augmented tenant. In other words, if I was, I don't know, I was making windows, I might have an installer renting the second floor from me and paying me rent. But what's cool about this is that the glass installer, window installer, whose offices are upstairs from me, he or she, they have a completely separate unit, right? So basically what we're doing is we're taking one industrial condo and creating an opportunity for 2 tenants, each of whom have independence and can lock their places and keep them private, right? And augmented tenancy, if you sell these condos, because industrial condos sell like, they sell really, really well. Having a tenant upstairs on a mezzanine, just, that helps you pay your mortgage and improves your return on investment, your ROI. Now, you guys know, I think naming is very, very important. And name your buildings, whether they're residential or they're industrial. And in this case, I said to Frankie and Alex, let's name the business park. And what I did was I did a little bit of research into the history of this particular area. And it turned out the first priest that ever served this particular parish, his name was Simeon Houdon. He was a native of Quebec City, and he came to this part of the world in 1889. So I said, why don't we call it Houdon Business Park, Parc d'Affaires Houdon? And I kind of like that name. So I think that's what we're probably going to call it. It's the cheapest way that you guys can add value to a residential building, to an industrial building, to just about anything, by giving it a little bit of panache, right? Names are really important. Names of parks, business parks, whatever, is very important. So when you do your Calabogie tiny house town, give it a great name, right? I don't know what it is, Karina, but give it a good name. So when we were doing the yield plan for this particular thing, we were breaking it into phases. Phases are very important so you don't go bankrupt. So we looked at maybe on this particular parcel having 4 6,000 square foot buildings here. And believe it or not, on a site that's quite big, we could fit 4 buildings on it. And the architect said that we could only build 2. Well, when Henri heard that, he thought, oh my God, I'm not going to make very much money on this project if I only have 2 buildings. And I said, well, that's unacceptable. And I was a little disappointed in the architect, and I challenged him to do better. And he did, actually, to give him credit. He said, if we put them in a U shape like this, we could fit 4 buildings. So from going from this to this, he could fit it on with all the different, constraints. I was extremely disappointed that he didn't do better on the first go around. But anyway, we did get our 4 units, so we got the productivity that we wanted. And I'm not going to go through all of the numbers for you, but I will put in the Dropbox the spreadsheet if you're interested in it. Basically, when we went through it, Henri on these 4 buildings will make almost $2 million, which is not bad. The key thing here, though, is that it's scalable. In other words, I said, Henri, to do it for $2 million or 1.9 million, that's good. Nothing wrong with doing that. But what you want to do is you want to do this again and again and again. That's the key, right? He's going to get really good at doing this. And if he doesn't do a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth, if he did one of these every 2 years, he could make $1 million a year doing this. Maybe a little bit more as he gets better at it. So I'm going to get out of this again. Put that. Any questions for me? Is everybody sleeping?
So Bruce,
Yeah.
do we need to do someone who has a full-time job could do something like that, like the last project or even the stack townhouse? Or is it something like part-time, full-time? I know maybe most of the people on the call are full-time,
Yeah.
but what's the intensity? I know at the beginning of the course
Yeah.
you said that, being a development manager is just managing some part of the process, but in
Yeah.
terms of of time intensity. And if you need a team, I know some people on the call are with their partners, with their family members. So what are the resources requirements for those types of projects?
So something like this, there's no substitute, Jessica, for having an owner on site. Ask Jake, ask Paula. A development like this, I'll bet you Henri will be there every single day. Well, it's ongoing. He'll be involved in the sales. He'll be involved in the site plan agreement.
From 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. or like popping on lunchtime.
So I would think he would be there probably on site around 6:30, 6:45, because most of the construction people will be on site by 7, usually 6:45 a.m. And he certainly would be there, I think, for most of the morning every day. Or if not every day, almost every day. He would be working with the foreman. He'd be working with the general contractor. He'd be working with the architect and the suppliers. you know, there's no substitute for an owner on site. So it's quite intense, Jessica. All right, and there's another riff on this, and this will probably be the last one I'll do for our course. So you probably heard enough of these different models, but there's another model that's kind of a riff on this called the industrial home builder model. And this is another one of those get some free land models, right? Which I wanted to show you guys, just to show you that there's some other things out there. I call this the industrial home builder model. What the heck is an industrial home builder? And this was a little bit of work I did for a small township called Montague Township. And I showed them a couple of slides, well, more than a couple. And I said, the demand these days is for a house and a workshop, a house and an industrial building. You know, if you drive down any rural road in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, in Wyoming, in Alberta, in Ontario, drive down any rural road, you'll see a house in front and a big shed in the back where mom and pop have some kind of a business, right? Mom and pop live in the front here and they've got kitchen cabinet building in the back, right? And some humongous shed in the back. So when I talk to cities and towns and townships and counties in the States and in Canada about reinventing something that has worked for a few hundred years, they say, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't have industrial and residential. I said, oh, really? I said, within a few kilometers of where you're sitting, there's probably dozens, if not hundreds of these going on right now. Oh, no, there's not. I said, do you ever leave your office? You know, most planners, they never leave their office. They think the entire world is, you know, living on a 30th floor condo above a pub downtown. They don't go anywhere. They don't know anything. They're absolutely know nothing. So I'm sorry, but it's true in most cases. And I said, within a few kilometers of here, there'll be hundreds, perhaps, certainly dozens. And I suspect hundreds of people in Ottawa, in Toronto, in Austin, Texas, or wherever, you know, where you have mom and pop living here, and they've got some kind of a shop in the back where they're doing something. So here's this new model. And like I said, it'll be the last one I probably will do in this course. You can find within 50 kilometers of where probably all of you are living, you can find rural industrial subdivisions that haven't seen a new building in 25 years. They haven't had a single new building built in a generation. And most of these little rural industrial subdivisions are vacant or largely vacant. So let's say you went into a rural subdivision like this, and there's a couple of roads, and there's one lonely building here. What if you were to add a corner store to that? What if you were to put a few apartments above the corner store? What if you were to add a few townhouses to the industrial subdivision? Right? This is my bad animation. That's the best I could do. Pretty cool. So here's a client of mine, Gary Greer and Mary Greer, wonderful people. They live in a small town in Ontario called Smith Falls, and they have this beautiful industrial subdivision. Not a single lot, not one lot has a building on it, nothing. It's been around, I don't know, it's been around for at least 20 years. And you know, it's a small town, and like I said, you can go to small towns in the States and small towns in Ontario and across Canada, and you'll find lots of these. And people like Mary and Gary and towns themselves and counties and townships themselves own a lot of these. And they just sit there. They sit there and they don't get any property taxes. They grow weeds. So what I said to Gary and Mary, and what I said to the township is, look, there is a shortage of industrial land to own and build on. And they said, no, we've got lots of it. I said, yeah, you got lots of it, but you got the wrong model. And I'm just going to skip around here. So these are some pictures I took of Gary and Mary's subdivision industrial subdivision. And Gary is an artist. He's a bit out there. He's a different kind of guy. He built all of this stuff. So he's got a nice road in here and he's got all this good stuff. And I said to Gary and Mary, well, maybe you ought to create your own client. They said, well, what do you mean? Well, nobody's coming to buy, not even a single acre, not one of your lots. I don't know, they got 25 or 30 lots here, not one of them, you know, so create your own business. Well, what kind of business? I don't know, let's think about it. So what they did was this was Gary's idea, they created a mini storage business. You can sort of see it here on the right and on the left. What they did was they just bought old sea cans and they lined them up along the road that Gary built. And they run quite a successful mini storage business now called Prolock. And you can see that there's the road and there's not a single building there. So he created his own client. He's got these mini storage containers and he just converted old sea cans, sea containers into mini storage units. And he calls it Prolock. Gary sets them up and Mary, who's a dear, sweet old lady. I got to be careful about when I say old because I'm getting there too, but she's older than me. She's a dear, sweet lady, and she rents them. She's really good at it. And look what they did. They have 112 units currently appraised. The business is appraised at 1.9 million. They get about $13,000 per month from this business. They don't charge much, $115 per container. They've got room, they've got 112, they've got room for over 300 more of them. And they're already making, what is that? About 150 grand a year. For an older couple, that's not bad. So they've done a really, really good job. They don't have any debt against it. It's just money in their jeans. And Mary loves doing it. So let's see if I can do I have another? Yeah, and here's another one. So this is the typical person that I have in my mind. This is another friend of mine. I coach him as well. His name's Nick Kachmar. He runs his own heating, ventilation, and air conditioning company. And this is him in his office. And you'll see here next what it is. So this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about. So he has a home here. If you can see on my screen, this is his home in front. And he built this workshop in the back. And that's him in the mezzanine of the workshop. So his commute to work is about 100 feet, right? And I'm going to stop sharing now. So what I'm trying to get across to you guys is this. There's a model here where you could get free land. And this is what I have in my mind. But it has to be somebody younger. It can't be me. And it can't be Gary and Mary because they're well into their 80s now. They're not going to do that. So the model is this. You could go to any number of townships, towns, cities in Canada, the United States, where they have these empty industrial parks. And you could say to them, look, you rezone it to allow both industrial buildings and residential, because that's the combination. As long as it's just simply industrial, the industrial guys, men and women, they'll go buy a house somewhere. And if they have to, illegally, they'll build a huge shed in the back that nobody can see, where they'll run their business. So the planners are incredibly blinkered or blindfolded. They are. They say, oh, we can't do it. Well, you just take pictures around the town. There'll be dozens of people who are doing this already. But if you want to have your industrial park a success, instead of having 25 beautiful industrial lots like Gary and Mary, all of them empty, and Montague Township, not far away, has another subdivision where they have 35 lots, and I think they have 4 or 5 of them that have been built on. So they have 90% vacancy. You say, look, rezone it so you can allow a house and a workshop, and I'll do a land lease for you, right? I'll do a land lease, and I'll build the house, and I'll build the workshop. I'll rent it out, and we'll share the proceeds, right? Something like that. Or you could just simply buy the whole damn thing on $1 down and $1 a year for 1 million years, right? Because they're out of ideas. There's all kinds of ways that you could get land for almost no money, in my opinion, if you had a plan to fill it up and it was viable, and you had a council and a mayor and planners and economic development officers who buy in and understand that what people want, and we're not talking about heavy industry, we're not talking about a petrochemical factory We're not talking about a fireworks factory and residential, because petrochemical plants and fireworks factories have a nasty habit of blowing up, right? So you don't want to put a house next to them because you'll kill those people eventually. So what you want is you're talking about light industry, you're making kitchen cabinets, or you're doing some, making windows or whatever. So you have a workshop and a house, and you could fill up those industrial subdivisions, in my opinion. Anyway, that's just another model to think about. You can get very cheap land, or you might get it for nothing. You might just, it's the same thing that if you remember what I said about Bill Maholtra when he did a land lease on the best parcel in Ottawa and put those land lease fees into the condo fees. He got the best parcel to develop in Ottawa, built a beautiful building on it, and never paid a dime for the land, not one dime. And it works. All right, before we break for the day, is there any other questions? Unmute yourselves, come on, we got another few minutes.
Yeah, I got a question there, Bruce. So
Yes.
we were talking about the freehold townhouses.
Yes.
On the 55 or 50 on a 1 acre lot. What was the ROI on that project?
Are we talking about the stacked townhouses? Dave?
Yes, the stacked townhouse. Yeah.
Yeah, so Haven did 60 stacked townhouses, and the average sale price was about, I think, close to $700,000. Right? Yeah, so it was about a $42 million sale, right? Because these were condos that they did sell off. So it was about 42 million bucks. And their margin on that was about 14%. So they would have made between $5 and $6 million on that. One of the things, Dave, that would really help their profitability would have been to have a whole menu of upgrades. They were not keen on doing upgrades, right? They basically said that this is the unit, and take it or leave it. But upgrades can really add a lot, because a 13 to 15% margin is okay. But most of the upgrades, you can make 40% on those, your gross profit margin. So having a better lighting package, a better plumbing package, better flooring, you can often upsell and make 40 points.
Is there any room for animation on those kind of projects? Because it looks like most of the land area is taken up with the buildings.
Yes, so the animations for that, had I gotten involved with that project a little earlier, what we would have done is we would have definitely used the lock-off suite as an animation, because just the way that, if you remember what Brad Cartier and Aaron Markle showed us, where they got 10 units in a building that was, essentially a sixplex, right? So remember I called it the 10-plex sixplex?
Yeah.
All right. So the lock-off suites are a huge animation. It allows you to do augmented tenancies. It allows people to have little businesses in those lock-off suites, maybe run them on Airbnb or whatever they want to do with them, make some money at it, have a, like I said, a little business in it. And you're not paying, you're not penalized because you don't have to provide more parking, and you also don't have to have, another development charge. So you could, instead of having 60 units in there, you could have actually ended up probably with 90. Same footprint.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is a big animation, and once Brad and Aaron finish, right, with their building, we should revisit that and see how their profitability is, and how they're doing, in terms of leasing it as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Bruce.
Anytime. Anything else?
So,
Yeah.
hi, Bruce. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, Alex, you go first.
Yeah, it's just I guess a business question. If we look at a property, we have models, and then we fail to meet the the return criteria,
Right.
and so on. And luckily, if the property's not losing money, that's great. I mean, if you're losing money on the property, that's a disaster. But just over the climate, what are the strategies there to sit and hold?
Yeah,
Et cetera?
that's a really good question, because like I said when we started this lecture today, we're in a bit of a jam, right? We can't really do much on our costs. Can't change the interest rates. We can't reduce our natural gas prices, you know, that we're paying. So if you have a project, say a piece of land, and you put it through the process and it's generating a 5% cap rate, 5.5%, and our target, as you know now, is 8%, maybe you don't build that project, but you can't sell it either, right? Because if you sell it, you'll sell it at a loss. So I would go back to what Warren Buffett said. You know, if you, let's say we bought a piece, you know, I bought a piece of land, as I mentioned, in 93, I think it was, yeah, 93, for 15 cents a square foot. And just a few years later, sold it for $6.50 a square foot. Now, if I had panicked, you know, maybe the following year or the year after, maybe I would have bailed out of it and sold it for 20 cents a square foot, right? But I was patient. And I think in this business, you know, where there's a cycle, right? Real estate tends to lead into a recession and lag, right? So real estate cycles are longer than economic cycles. Like tech guys will come out of the recession, Alex, faster than we will in real estate. So real estate might be the first into the, you know, the down cycle, and might be the last out. But when it comes out, it comes roaring back. And that's the psychology that you could take advantage of. Because when things are going bad, people say, oh my God, it's going to be bad forever. Well, that's not true. And if things are going good, everybody says, this is going to go on forever. This is awesome. I just got to keep, my house is going to go up 20% per year forever. And I was telling people for the last few years, that's not going to work. That's going to stop, you know, but people say, oh no, it's going to go. No, it's not. So if it was my land, and I know your properties are very well located, I wouldn't panic, but it might mean that you're in for a 2 or 3 year wait. And sometimes longer. And in the case of the Canada land, it didn't take very long because Terry Matthews wanted to build a golf course for his technology campus, and he wanted to build the Brook Street Hotel, and he came to say, knock, knock, knock. And, you know, he offered me, I don't remember what it was, 18 million bucks. And you know how long it took me to say yes?
Half a second.
Well, probably half a second in my head. But I said to Terry, well, I'll have to think about that. Because what you don't want to do is you don't want to engage in something called buyer's remorse. Like if I had said, oh, that's great. Yeah, absolutely. Slam dunk. I'll sell it to you. You know, where do I sign? He might have had buyer's remorse, right? He might say, well, I could have got it for 12 million. So I said, you know, it's interesting. And I did tell him truthfully, look, I wanted to develop it. I wanted to do industrial warehousing on that property. I wanted to develop it. He said, I need it for my project. He said, I'm not going to tell you what the project is. I said, oh, it's your golf course and your hotel. He said, how did you know? I said, Terry, in this town, there are no secrets. Everyone knows you want to build a golf course and a hotel for your technology campus. It's common knowledge. And he said, well, nobody's supposed to know. I said, everybody in the business knows because it's a small town. And he laughed and he said, well, okay. And I said, but I really wanted to keep it and build some industrial warehousing because we're going to need it. We're going to come out of this recession eventually. And I'll think about it. And I kept him waiting for a couple of weeks, you know, just to make sure that, yeah, he didn't have buyer's remorse. But I in my head, I was going, yeah, this is awesome. I mean, I paid $450,000. I got something like 18 million of it, but I should have kept the money instead of putting it in the friggin' Senators. All right, Karina, you had a question?
Yeah, no, I really like that land lease model that you just spoke about, the one, because I see that as a kind of a neat out of the box idea for especially right now where interest rates are high and carrying costs are going to be expensive, and you know, all of that, and even financing is getting harder too.
Well, way
right,
harder.
because a lot of lenders are being very skittish right now on lending. And so this whole idea of like leasing land and doing something with it is pretty cool. The whole concept of leasing land is new to me that I'm just diving in.
Think about this, Karina. You asked, how to go forward. The land leasing model that I just described for these towns and townships that have industrial parks that have nothing going on. You know, if you think it through for a moment, people need a place to live and people need something to do. And I said, in answer to your other question, I said, supply chains are shortening up. We can't rely on the States and we can't rely on China or other trading partners. We have to become more self-reliant. So this idea of having, you know, a workshop and a house on one of these 30 sites and typically these industrial subdivisions have, you know, 25 to 40 lots. They're not huge. They're not 1,000 lots. They're 25, 30, 35 lots. So if you went to Montague Township and said, look, lease me, you know, a couple of these lots, and you found somebody who wanted a house and they wanted a workshop, and you built it and leased it to them, and you're on a land lease, you're never going to pay a dime for the land, because you wouldn't start your land lease until you had a client, until in fact the warehouse and the house was built. That's what Bill Malhotra did. You know, he built that I don't know, 14, 15 story building downtown Ottawa on a land lease, and the land lease didn't start until people moved in and were paying condo fees. So he never paid a cent for it. You know, so in terms of, you know, but the thing is that this is a scalable model, because as I said, I bet you could find all over North America, I bet you could find 500 business parks that haven't had a new building in 25 years. And those are the people I would talk to, and they're easy to find. And you know, they should, in my opinion, be open to adding more flexibility in the zoning. And as you saw my terrible animation, not just to have a house and a workshop, but maybe to have a corner store there too, right? So you could actually go and get a popsicle in the summer. So there's all kinds of things that could be done with these industrial parks, because they're just sitting there and they don't actually know what to do with them. Anyway, anything else before we break for the day? Everybody asleep now? All right, listen, you guys, it has been a great pleasure of mine to have such wonderful students come and study with me and put up with me for 4 months. And I'm going to hear from you guys, you know, with your case studies, November 23rd, and then the final exam just before Christmas. And I'm really looking forward to hearing from you next time. All right, guys?
Thank you,
Thanks, Bruce.
Bruce.
See you later.
Thanks, Bruce.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.